very extra.
More looking out.
No, I used the one button here.
I didn't want to
All
at all. My dad.
right, we're presenting.
No, one button.
Oh, Danielle, it's not in yet. Okay, that's okay.
I'm in.
She's got us on.
I'm here.
Video?
Oh. I'm sorry.
I'm here. Can you hear me? Okay.
All right, I'm
here.
calling this Newington Board of Education meeting to order. This is our budget work session. It is Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. The time is 6:06 PM. Would you all rise as able, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Michael Branda,
Here.
Danielle Rose,
Here.
Dr. Bruce Fletcher,
Here.
Bethany Wagner,
Here.
Richard LaVerriere,
Here.
Amy Parati,
Here.
Sam Sharma,
Here.
Jessica Weir,
Here.
Anastasia Yap.
Here.
I have everybody here.
Very good. So we'll go to agenda item B, which is our public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities. You can call in by telephone. The number is 860-665-8659. If you are a member of the public here, you may participate here as well. And if you are online, we just simply ask you to raise your hand and state the street that you live on, your name and the street. We do limit civil participation to 3 minutes per person. So if there is anybody at this time that would like to bring up any questions or make any comments, we'll give you an opportunity. All right, I don't see any hands online. I don't see anyone publicly here. So I'm going to move on to agenda item C, our new business, which is going to be the review of instructional programs. And at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Brummett.
Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. I'd like to start the night out with a brief review of a brief review or a recap of some of the questions that the board members asked at the end of last meeting. With the help of my team, we prepared some slides that were responsive to those questions, and I thought that might set us up nicely for our discussion this evening. So one of the questions asked the other evening was our special education statistics. And this is a graphic that delineates how many students we have by disability label. So I'm going to just go over what each of these labels mean with that alphabet soup chart. We've got speech language impairment is the top one at 75 students. And this is approximate because from day to day, some kids exit special ed, some kids come into special ed. Specific learning disability, dyslexia, is 24 students. Specific learning disability, not dyslexia, is 190. OHI, ADHD, and OHI stands for other health impaired. ADD means they have ADD and that impacts their education. That's 94 students. Other health impaired means some other health condition that impacts the learning. That's 39 students. Multi-disabled is you have more than one disability that equally impact you, 25. Intellectually disabled, 11. Hearing impaired, 10. Emotionally disturbed, 27. I'm sorry, it's emotionally disabled now. Developmentally delayed, 41. Deaf and blind, 1. And autism spectrum disorder, 99. So I believe that was the question, simply how many kids fall into every category. I think folks can read the graph that our top categories are specific learning disability, autism spectrum disorder, and OHI, ADD. We're very comparable to most districts with those categories being in your top. Speech and language impairment, it comes very close fourth. So that is
Good job.
That is, I didn't catch that. Is there a question?
I think there are some people online. You have your microphones turned on. If you would please just mute them. Thank you.
There was also a question the other evening about our multilingual statistics. And thank you to Kristen Freeman, who gathered this data. And I forgot to thank Marlena Giulioso, who gathered the data on the previous slide, our special education director. This breaks it down by our top languages at every school, and how many children are identified as ML, multilingual, in each school. So it's pretty self-explanatory that Anna Reynolds has 56 kids, with the 3 top languages being Portuguese, Spanish, and Polish. And E. Green, 51, and I'll let you look at those languages. John Patterson, 59, and Ruth Chafee, 42. The top 3 languages do vary from school to school, as you can see. Martin Kellogg and John Wallace are pretty comparable, including the top 3 languages. Newington High School, Spanish, Portuguese, Ukrainian, and for budget reasons, Newington High School now has over 20 students who speak Spanish, and that triggers a state law that provides that we have to give some sort of bilingual program to our students once we have 20 or more who speak the same language. So that is why we are proposing a bilingual tutor for the high school. We have to, by state statute, provide something, and that can vary from a tutor to a teacher to a whole program. But we've opted to provide a tutor if that is what the board agrees to. I do say we have to provide something. We cannot, you get 1 year to play catch up to when you have 20 or more, and this is the year we're playing catch up, and we have to add something next year. So our total is 354 multilingual learners, and those are the top 3 languages. And you can see the impact of the Ukrainian situation on Newington Public Schools. So below there is information about that Newington High School has 31 students whose first language is Spanish. Again, that trigger was 20. And there she reiterates the state statutes. And here are some other native languages that our kids that are not the top 3, but you can see the very significant number of languages above and beyond some of those top 3, which, create some challenges with not only how we educate the children, communicating with their parents. Parent Square has been a huge asset for that because it can translate into a multitude of languages. But this is, I didn't count these up, but that looks like close to 20 languages above and beyond our top 3. Oh, more than that, actually. So we've really expanded our multilingual population. And why is that important? It creates additional challenges, additional programmatic requirements, and that has a budget impact. So that's why it's pertinent for tonight's discussion. A question was also posed. Oh, please.
Just a quick question about our second language learners. I wanted to ask if the numbers that you showed, and I think I know the answer, but just wanted to make it clear that those numbers reflect students who, through the Lost Links state test, it has been determined that their dominant language to learn in is not English, thus requiring additional services to help them access our teaching.
Yes, I would say that the Lost Links determines their proficiency in English. And if they have a certain level or lack of a certain level of proficiency, they are eligible for multilingual services. Kristen, is there anything else you think we should add to that discussion?
I would just add to that the level on the Lost Links determines which type of service you qualify for, whether that is a direct service or whether that is on consult. Parents do have the right to opt their students out of multilingual services. And we have some students who are identified as ML, but are also are also under the services of an IEP. And so sometimes the multilingual services end up getting kind of wrapped up in IEP services.
Okay. Our next area that was inquired about was our mental health support statistics. And here's what they look like. School counselors exist only at the secondary level, 3 at John Wallace, 3 at Martin Kellogg, 7 at Newington High, or a total of 13. Psychologists, we have 1 at every school for a total of 7. Social workers, we have 1 at every school with the exception of Newington High, which has 2. That's a grand total of 8. So our grand total of mental health workers in the district on our FTE employ are 28. These statistics do not include the ESS, or Effective School Solutions Program. We have 1 clinician from that program at Kellogg, 1 at Wallace, and 3 at the high school. 3 as of January. There was also a question posed where the grant stood for the mental health workers that we applied for and did not get. I will tell you, and I'll call the state to verify, one of the reasons why we may not have gotten it is these ratios are well within recommended ratios by, I believe the organization is SISCA. South Corn can correct me if I'm wrong. However, what they don't reflect is the significant need that we are experiencing, and probably many of our neighbors with the mental health challenges. So this is our current service statistics rather. And the grant is going to reopen again in 2 weeks. At such time, I'll get some feedback on the grant we submitted, clean up anything that they think would be make it stronger, and we can apply for the second round. Allows you to apply for over $200,000. So I'll probably collaborate with special education and try to get that 3rd clinician to continue forward next year in the high school ESS program. We only put that person in for the rest of the year due to significant needs at the high school. Okay.
You have a question?
Yeah, and just going back to clarify, in terms of the role of the school counselors, because I know there was question, guidance counselor versus mental health counselor. So if you could just distinguish the two there.
Well, these all fit under the category of mental health workers for purposes of state definitions, but it's important to discern that at the high school, for example, the school psychologist spends the vast majority of her time assessing. And at our high schools, while the high school's counselors are supposed to spend most of their time counseling students toward college and career readiness, they are often meeting with students due to mental health needs. And that would go for the middle school counselors and certainly the social workers. So they all fall under that category. I did not put nurses here. The state would allow us to consider nurses mental health providers, but here in our district, they often do a quick triage and then refer the student to one of these other folks on the table. I will tell you, I've been meeting with folks throughout the year, and they're all spread extraordinarily thin and extraordinarily overwhelmed.
And just to follow up, our guidance, our counselors, because I don't want it to be like a derogatory term as much as like, oh,
Counselors,
school
is the
counselor,
correct term
yeah.
these days.
And I was just wondering because I feel like that role has evolved given that. So just curious, is that becoming more of a, they're getting mental health training before entering that job?
That is part of their training, and obviously they also get additional training through us. Perhaps when, Seth, you're on the line, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So appreciate the question and appreciate the clarification. So our title is now school counselor. When you think of a guidance counselor previously, they really just did vocational services for some, but now school counselors are trained is both on academic, personal, social, and the career aspect. So in personal social is that mental health piece. So again, it has evolved drastically over the last several years. Our occupation, it's not just simply helping some students with the vocational aspirations. Now it is all students and also in those 3 domains.
Thank you, Seth.
All right, we have another question.
Oops.
Online. Anastasia, go ahead.
Hi, I had a question in regards to your multilingual slide. Sorry, I had my hand raised. Maybe you guys didn't see it. Actually 2 and on. Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. Are the bilingual students at Newington, you said there was 20 and that triggered the state statute. Are these students that reside in Newington, or are some of those students from the open choice program? And second question is, which state statute states that? Those are my only 2 questions.
I'm going to kick this over to Kristen, but I'm thinking we'd have to do a little research as to any of the students at the high school if they were from the open choice program. Kristen, you did send me the state statute, but I don't have it on this slide. Do you have it committed to memory, or should I dig up that email?
Yeah, I was just about to dig up the email. Ms. Yap, I can tell you that I don't know if any of the students who are native Spanish speakers reside in Hartford. For us, they're all Newington students. So when I pulled the data, I did not delineate with their hometown. I'm looking up now the statute.
Okay, yeah, I didn't say Hartford. I just said open choice. I didn't know if we only got from Hartford. I thought we had gotten. It was just maybe there's some confusion. I just meant the open choice program, which I knew we have kids from Hartford, Meriden, other places. So not specifically Hartford, just open choice in general. And if you could find out that number, that would be great for open choice, not just Hartford. And if you could email that to me later, that's fine as well. I know we're just going over the information.
Just to clarify, Ms. Yap, all of our open choice students come only from Hartford. We don't take children from Meriden or New Britain. Some of our children go out to magnet schools, so that reverse, and they go all over the place, but we only take in Hartford open choice students. Did you find that state statute, Ms. Freeman? If not, we can.
I'm gonna,
what's the number there, Mr.
Dr. Berman, if you give me a second, I will look it up and I can at least put it in the chat if Debbie wants to record
Very
it for
good.
the minutes.
That is what we shall do. And my apologies, we had reviewed it today, but did you say it's in an email to me, Mr. Branda?
He's sending it.
Yeah, it was sent to the board on Sunday. I just forwarded it to
There it is.
Dr. Brumma and Kristen, just so you didn't have to dig through all your emails.
There it is.
Thank you very much. All right, so I think we can move on.
Yes, so
Can you forward it
it's
to me if that's okay? I just can't see that.
Yep,
Okay.
I literally just did it.
perfect.
Okay,
All
thank
righty.
you.
Onward and upward. All right, we also were, board member asked about the non-lapsing fund utilization. This is the history that we have dating back to 2016. It started off in the $1.2 million range. Nothing was used in that year. The following year, we put aside 297, again, this is pre my time, 297,000 to make a total of, my apologies. We added revenue, but then there was expenditures that year, which Lou, I believe you told me went to some supplies or
Computer technology.
computers.
Special ed tuition and salaries.
Very good. Important to note that year we had a 0.27 increase, which does create these shortfalls. 2018-19, there were no expenditures, so money was set aside to put in that balance. 2019-20, that was my first year in the district, and I believe that's the COVID impact where we had a lot of realized savings that year, brought our total up to 2.3 million. We had a little bit of a set aside in 2020-21, mostly due to the health benefit credit. That brought our total to 3.1 million. Last year, we utilized 438,000. And again, that was as a result of 2 low budget increases, leaving us with 2.6 million. This year, we intend to use about $2 million, but that is just an estimate at this time. that is what we had planned for during the budget season last year, which would leave us with a balance, assuming that all plays out, of $690,000. Everyone knows, the budget's a snapshot in time, but that is the game plan as of today, to make sure we backfill the budget so that the end result was that there were no layoffs last year. Okay. And then a question was posed about what exactly are the issues that are causing cost escalation or supply chain impact. There's many reasons. Lou pulled for me for tonight's discussion, and he could provide the board with tremendous, he came in with a stack of papers today. I said, well, let's start with a few pieces of paper, which are all linked here. And I got to download this or they're going to be sideways. So we did a few samples out of the budget. I know everyone's going to be stunned to see that toilet paper has gone up 15%. I'm sorry. Superintendents want to have fun every now and again too. Floor cleaners up 10%, microbial soap, 38% increase, electrical wire up 59%. You want to buy an air conditioner at Lowe's, it's up about 11%. HVAC motor up 56.7%. This was an interesting set of statistics. Sorry, don't get dizzy. Fuel costs. We started off back in July of 2021 rather, at about $1.85 a gallon. And again, we have a price fixing program for gasoline that did get renewed this year, but we're still seeing about a $2.65 per gallon increase total. So you can see it's up from $1.85 from about a year and a half ago. And again, it's only February, so Lou put in a lot of estimates toward the bottom here. Lou, can you, I don't want to misspeak about diesel. Could you narrate the diesel component? Just this column.
Diesel is
Here.
used for the gas, or for all the buses that are the big buses. A lot of our smaller buses use regular gasoline. So we have a blend of utilization every year. This particular graphic on the left shows regular gasoline purchased and utilized by the student transportation operation. The right-hand side is diesel for the bigger vehicles. So the first year, which is on the upper half, we had bid price arrangements in place for the whole year at around $1.85 for both gas and for diesel. So you can see that over the course of the year, we had $148,000 spent between those two for 77,000 gallons of gasoline at that point. And there's been continuing pressure on our operation to expand routes, a lot of specialized services in support of the special ed department and other needs that have been identified at the schools that have us augmenting our regular routes with specialized arrangements for different kids. So we're constantly broadening our reach as far as how many vehicles are on the road, how many miles are being driven, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some bracket creep that's there. At the end of last year, there was no contract to be had on either gas or diesel at that point. So on the gasoline side, we had bought a lot of, between ourselves and the town, let's say 100,000 gallons or 125,000. So we were able to ride that another couple months into this year before we exhausted our contracted capacity. So it immediately jumped up $2.55, then $3.22. And in January, or as of January 1st, they entered into a contract for gasoline for both the board and the town at $2.88 a gallon that will go halfway through next year. So those that price is set on that side. On the diesel side, there is no such luck of having a contract to this point. You can see immediately when we came off the contract June 30th last year, we're immediately up at $4.40 a gallon at that point, and it's been bouncing around over the last 6 months. Highest it got was $5.09 a gallon. That was there. So right now it's a little bit lower, but it's trending up again. So we've basically just, using the, our best guess about where it's going to come, and we picked $4 a gallon for the rest of the year for the next 5 months of consumption. So the combination of gasoline coming in, we figure around $96,000, and diesel at $179,000. We also have to buy additive for winter season for the buses, so that's another $5,600 we put in. We're going to spend somewhere in the vicinity of $280,000 for fuel of both types against a budget of $283,000 for the year. So we're just a shade above, better than budget at this point. But compared to last year, that was $148,000. So that's somewhere in the vicinity of a 90% increase year to year for the fuels to run the transportation department. And the everybody's best guess about where it's going is not coming down really at any substantial rate anytime soon. So as we look to next year on the gasoline side at $2.88, that'll be for the first half of the year guaranteed. Then we're off contract again. So what contract opportunities will be out there for us to be able to take advantage? We just don't know at this time. So we're putting in a defensive position of about a 20% increase for that part of the operation for next year, which brings it up to from 52 to 72,000 on the gasoline side. Similar results on the diesel side. We're going to end up somewhere around $4 a gallon, and we're putting in a 20% buffer on the price for gasoline or for diesel for all of next year because there is no contract at this time, which pushes us up from $178 to $240,000 for that part of it, another $60,000. So between both gasoline and diesel, our ask for next year is up about, I think it was $83,000 over the current budget, $82,000. So that's, the story. If anybody has a better knowledge where we can, go to the futures market and make some money, give me a call.
Price chopper, gas points. All right, and then the other area that we pulled from just a sampling of why there are increases is IT. We want to be clear that at those top two IT items, formative and Wonder Workshop, were moved from different budgets into IT. So they were in inflation just simply because they went from one pocket to another pocket of the budget. However, the other items, Brain Pop, Screencastify on down, are the product of inflation. And you can see, for example, Brain Pop goes up about $5,000 or $4,000. Well, the increase is on the far right column. So those are just samplings of even some of our software that we need is just going through the roof. So that this particular line item is 46,000, but to be clear, about 24,000 is attributable just to having them move from one budget area to another, but still a fairly significant increase. So those were two samples. Lou has collected other items that would illustrate some of the other areas of increase. And if the board would like me to send those to them, we can do that because Lou had done a lot of research about, just other inflationary items. So you can send me an email or Dr. Fletcher an email, and we'll be happy to forward a pretty good stack of other information relative to inflation and how that impacts Newington's budget ask for next year. Moving on to grant funded positions. You saw this slide the other night, which illustrates that currently we have 61.8 positions funded by grants, or about 3.2 million. The board wanted to know specifically what those positions are, and I will tell you that as we go through the book tonight, it'll be outlined for you in each section, but just as a summary page, which is also in your book, these are the grants that are paying for positions at this time. Title grants, I won't read all those to you because again, you're going to see these again in the budget book. The title grants aren't going away, and we seem to go up a little bit every year, but those are the salaries that are covered by title grants. ARP ESSER does expire this next year. So this is kind of the one I would imagine this question came from. All of these positions are funded by the ARP ESSER grant. So we will have to determine next year as a board how to deal with them when that grant funding goes away. I will say, and that's why I asked Representative Curry to present last week, and I saw another presentation today in which the Speaker of the House, Representative Ritter, was very confident that some of that legislation will go through next year relative to ECS monies, which will help the board offset some of this significant loss of grant money. If they go through, he's extraordinarily optimistic about it, which isn't always the case about legislation. So there's a significant number of positions in ARP ESSER. Open choice grants. Again, that money is not going away unless we reduce our open choice students, but we pay for a significant number of staff members through this grant. Noteworthy is the library media specialist. Last year, the board voted not to eliminate that position. So in order to afford it, it was moved to the open choice grant. And we had anticipated an increase this year, and that is what happened. Many of the rest of this grant is split among all of our programs, but there are a lot of positions and programs paid for out of open choice grants. IDEA, that's the special ed grant, averages about $700,000 a year or thereabouts, largely pays for paraprofessionals, OTPT case manager positions, and some of our preschool teacher staff. And then the last grant I'll reference is Perkins. We don't get a lot out of that grant, but what we do get is paying for stipends for some of our DECA and FBLA advisors, as well as some of our STEM and HOSA and UConn EMT advisors. So that is the thumbnail sketch of our grants. Again, you will see those referenced throughout the evening in different allocations, but that gives you that summary. And this exact page appears in your budget book. Let's see if there's anything else. And then I'm going to kick this over to Steve. There were questions posed by the board about our enrollment projections. So Steve put together a few slides that will illustrate where that is going. So Mr. Farisi.
Thank you, Dr. Brummett. So this represents enrollment. I think it dates all the way back to 1987, I believe, is the first year. It's hard to read from here. 1987 and 88, and then projects all the way through. What you'll see in the last, I believe, 9 years, projecting forward, would be a little asterisk that shows what the NASDAQ projections provide to us, which do not include seat declarations and open choice. If students stay for a 5th year at Newington High School, students who stay in our 18 to 21-year-old Transition Academy program, or any upcoming future developments, which we know we have many going up. So what we anticipate there would be the line next to it in red. When you take all those numbers on average of what we typically bring in, and then you take the developments that are going up over the next 4 years, and you approximate the numbers that could come to fruition annually on those, you start to get the new rates that would be in red. So it would show actually a slight increase in enrollment opposed to a decrease from where we are today, but still very stable. So we would anticipate that our future needs, we would be able to maintain with the staffing that we have, outside of programs that we know would best support the needs of our students when we talk about growing needs in areas like mental health and wellness, when we talk about offering programs that would enhance the currently existing programs, such as maybe bringing world language down to a 7th grade level or a 6th grade level. So those types of things would help improve our programming. Otherwise, we would imagine that we would maintain somewhat stable.
This next slide represents just our district reference group. So these are all the districts that are in our DIRG. And so when you go to the Ed site, Connecticut Ed site data portal, you can start to just run and look at what were the student teacher ratios in 21 and 22. And then you see it starts off with Old Saybrook having one of the most favorable student to teacher ratios all the way on the right-hand side of the column. And then the State Department a little bit lower than midway. And then Newington Public Schools in the lower third. So we're about in the lower third, the beginning of the lower third of the higher end of student teacher ratios in the classroom. That does take into account all instructional staff, and that's how they do it for the state numbers. I would never want anyone to think that those are our class sizes right there. This is, I believe, a slide that we shared maybe last board meeting.
Yes.
Where we had an opportunity just to show some of the differences in the needs of some of the towns that are in our DIRG, but also just surrounding towns that we often get asked about, because we often have to look at how do we compare to the towns that surround us, because generally that's where most folks who live in Newington might want to be employed. So we look at that, right, and see what does that look like, because that can give us good information to ensure that we're competitive and understand our student needs, so that way we can staff for that. And so this just gives you some general data around our student needs. I think what is a most intriguing statistic is the second column to the last, where you take the high need category of students. That would be all three, free and reduced lunch, EL, and students with disabilities. So that's our population that meet all three of those criteria, and we seem to be running the highest in the surrounding area. I think the question came up around our certified instructional staff and the totals. If you look at last year from 22-23, our instructional staff certified was 367.4. And if you go over, that's the number that includes administration, 397.85. So if you go down our anticipation for this coming year, we are reducing by 1.5 staff. God bless you, Lou. 365.9. And then if you go over, including administration, that would be a minus 95. That would go down to 396.9. And you'll see some of the reductions below and how we get to those numbers.
All right. And those are the summary slides that hopefully were responsive to board questions from the other night. I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Fletcher, for any follow-up questions. Otherwise, we can go right into the budget books.
Okay. Mr. Parisi.
I know there wasn't a slide on it, but I just I would add just to those slides the purpose and value behind them. We start to see that our enrollment isn't really going downward, right? Our enrollment is going to stay steady. Our needs of our student population is there. It's in some ways a little more significant than some surrounding towns. And we are working very hard and diligently to look at our staffing and make sure that we are staffing appropriately, but not overstaffing either. So that's why you'll see some reductions in that. So we're working very hard to make sure that we keep a close eye on that and really provide our students with what they need, but trying to be as responsible as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Yap?
I just had a question for Mr. Parisi, if that's okay, Dr. Fletcher.
Go ahead.
So I saw in a previous email, and I'm not sure, that you were looking to hire a few different people, paras, and I can't remember. You can please refresh my memory. You're looking to hire a few new positions. I know in a previous conversation, not the last meeting, the one before, that you were talking about increasing, staff of color. So they essentially can, be more identifiable with your Black and brown students. I know you're looking to hire now. Is that something that you're looking into, seeing that you do have those positions you're looking to fill? Just so we can have, I know we didn't have very many minority teachers. So is that something you're looking to do while filling these new positions?
Correct. No, thank you for the question. Yes, we are constantly trying to balance the demographics of our staff with the demographics of our student population and increase in the areas where we see deficits. So that is something we're keenly keeping an eye on as we go through the process, both through recruitment and then the hiring stages. So yes, right now we do have a lot more I would call them hourly positions available, like you mentioned, paraeducators, RBTs. We do have a couple long-term substitute positions available right now. But with all positions, we absolutely look to see if we can continuously diversify our workforce to have a better representation of our student population.
Thank you.
Mr. Leverrier?
Hi. Mr. Farisi, if I may, please. Do you use equity-based questions in your hiring interviews?
Richard, your audio is breaking up.
Oh.
We cannot hear you clearly.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Hello?
No, it's still.
I think I got the question. How about I'll repeat it back and you tell me if just yes or no. Do we use equity-based questions in the interview process?
Yes, that was my question, 100%.
All right. So we do. We actually take a look at all of our questions before we engage in the interview process. And we do use resources to support us in looking at, are they equity-minded, equity-focused? So yes, we do take a look at that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Farisi. And Dr. Fletcher, I apologize for the internet service.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. So at this time, we're going to move into the book,
The infamous book.
the infamous book.
And in order to kind of make everything smooth for the board night, I've asked Wendy to do an orientation to the book, an overview. That way folks know what they're looking at. We've tried very diligently to make them as smooth as possible and clear as possible. I want to thank Wendy, Kristen, Karen, I believe she's on virtually, for incredible work to make the book what you have here this evening. We really hope it provides the board with the detail they need as well as clarity that they need to see what the information is and make good decisions surrounding the budget. So Wendy, would you mind providing us with that orientation?
Absolutely. And whether you are a newer board member or you've been here a while and just looking for the fun surprises that await you, it's going to be an exciting night. So let's just turn to the art page since that's our first program. And what you'll see with all programs are set up the same way. The first page you see is a high-level overview of the expenditures. And you'll see the first column is what was appropriated for this school year. The second column is the program request. And then the third column is what the superintendent is bringing forward. So you might see differences there. When you turn the page, that's what we call the left-hand page there. That's where we'll start with our overviews. You'll see the major goals of the program, a description by level. And then at the bottom of that page, those are the program improvements. Those are things included in this budget request to support improvements. In program needs, those are things that are not included in this budget that may show up as a future need. Maybe they were cut this year, not deemed as a priority. Then over on the right-hand side, these pages got a little longer. You'll see, so there's your first fun surprise. So what you'll see here is this is much more broken down. We've included this by school as well as by object code. And then of course, you'll see those same appropriations this year compared to the initial request from staff, the program request, and the superintendent request. You're going to see a few places, particularly in supplies, where you might notice a significant change from this current year to our request. Oftentimes that's going to be because we used realized savings the prior year to purchase things in advance that offset the budget because of the low amount we had last year. So you'll see that as we go through. You'll see underneath each object, after it's broken down by school, there is a total there by district in like the gray bar, so you can see what the district amount was as well. And then the last page is what we're calling account details. Those are our details that we try to provide to answer any questions you have. We've added some things this year, so you'll see the first two rows go through the staffing so that when you look at 111, 118, 119, you'll be able to see exactly which staff are included in those numbers. You're then going to see a general overview of what the items are that are included in each object code. It's not an itemized list, but more of that general level. We didn't give you, this is how many yellow paints each school requested, but we just let you know that that was one of the items in there. At the bottom, you'll see cut items so that when you see a difference between program request and superintendent request, you can see what was cut at the superintendent level. Underneath the chart, that's going to answer your question when you see a change from the appropriations last year to what we're requesting this year. You'll see we've indicated what the major changes might include. And then finally, as Dr. Brummett showed, if there is a grant allocation associated with this program, you'll find it right there. Otherwise, we just indicated there's no grant allocation associated with that program. Meeting adjourned. So we're going to, as we go through, we'll really highlight the beginning part, and then hopefully a lot of the questions are answered on this last page here for anything that you find in the numbers, but we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Ms. Weaver.
Just incredible. I just want to say thank you so much for all of that, but also putting before in the beginning part all of the coding language with the location codes as well, because I know that was an issue last year. So I just want to say thank you. I think all of our pre-questions I had were already answered before, right when I opened the book. So thank you guys.
We aim to please here in Newington Public Schools.
I like it.
All right. I believe, are we ready now to begin our department by department?
We are ready to begin.
All right, we welcome to the podium virtually Seth Korn to discuss art. So don't look over there. He is not there. He is here.
I'm on the board.
There he is.
On the clock.
All right. The first draft. Thank you. And just to give you a brief description of the art program, it's offered to all students at Newington Public Schools that allows students to have exposure in various types of media, such as clay, painting, drawing, digital graphic design, to just name a few. At the high school, the program offers a variety of courses to meet the needs of a diverse student population. Among those courses, we offer a portfolio preparation class and an AP Studio Art class. Mrs. Krause did such a wonderful job already going over the art page, so she kind of stole some of my thunder. But for the budget for next year, for the 2023-2024 school year, the art department is requesting an amount of $42,126. Most of our budget typically is consumable art supplies, and as many things it has had a drastic increase in prices due to those rising costs of those items. So with that, I will turn the mic back over to Dr. Fletcher.
Thank you very much. Any questions from anyone? Okay, I don't see any questions. Thank you, Mr. Korn.
Now we're ready to move on to career technical education. Mr. Salerno, who's here in person.
Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. Good evening, everyone. This year, I'm also overseeing the career technical department at the high school, and it's my pleasure to present the 23-24 budget for the career technical department. The career technical department is comprised of 6 academies at the high school, which are listed as the Finance and Business Management Academy, the Culinary and Hospitality Academy, Engineering Academy, Biomedical, Family and Child Development, IT and Digital Creation Academy. This department is mostly funded through the Perkins Grant. And every year we apply for the Perkins Grant, and most of the like I said, the funds are through that grant. However, there are some things that are not funded through the grant, particularly consumables. And as we just mentioned, with the inflation prices, particularly eggs for this department, which have gone up 27.2%. We did have an increase with that request of about 12% overall with that increase. And our also request is for our DECA program. Our DECA program, a very successful program with Ally Miller as the head of it, competing in both state, national, and international competitions. We have $10,000 allocated for that department to not only take care of the stipends for the facilitators that go and the chaperones that go to these competitions, but also to offset the cost for the students. Any questions?
Just wondering if, as maybe a homework assignment, students can research, the replacement for eggs. Applesauce, I think, is one of them. So I'm not sure if that's happening.
Absolutely, I will lead the charge. And right now we're in transition with a position, so I've had to go to Restaurant Depot, and it's been quite an experience. I don't know if any of you have been to Restaurant Depot. I compare that to like Pac-Man and Frogger, I think a video game. But I will absolutely talk to my folks about replacement for eggs.
So it sounds like your team is scrambling to make provision.
Touche.
Mr. Leverrier?
Yes, good evening again. Thank you. So last week we did hear, or a few days ago, we heard a budget proposal, and I just want to know if there was an aerospace engineering teacher that was to come on, would that fall under your department here?
No, I caught it. That the engineering teacher that we did not recommend to move forward would be overseen by STEM, which is a combination of math and science.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna step out of the meeting and rejoin. Maybe my connection will be better.
I was going to suggest that. Thank you. Mr. Brandon?
Same question for the career development position. Would that have fallen in this?
Workforce development position?
Right,
Yeah.
it would have elevated the current position, Mr. Salerno, but is that under your auspices or that's part of the,
Yeah, new director of career development.
right?
That was the plans
Plans
proposal,
proposal.
yes.
So is it under, would it be part of Jay's department or?
It's I think a combination between myself and Mr. Korn.
So does that count as a future program need, or is that because it was plans and not put forward?
Yeah, that was just basically a plans proposal from the prior workforce development person.
Gotcha. So when
So-
it got to your, or whoever, I guess we're trying to figure out whose it is, then it just didn't make it into the needs.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, we didn't
Thank you.
prioritize it as something to move forward, feeling that the current structure was adequate.
I'd label it as an enhancement to the program.
Note to self. Okay.
Hey, just test. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry, I just stepped out and stepped back in.
Okay.
Sorry about the connection.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Weaver?
Yeah, just a question regarding the sports management curriculum. Is that allocating a grant to write the curriculum for a future course, or are we offering that course?
No, we are offering that course, and any time that with the Perkins grant that we face the Perkins grant, we have money allocated for curriculum writing. So we take a look at what curriculums need to be rewritten or revised, and we allocate that money there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Anyone else? So we are going to move on to education technology.
Yes, and I'm going to ask Craig Holland to join us. And just a reminder to the board as they get settled, our capital budget was presented and approved back in December, and that's where the bulk of our computer hardware goes. They're here to talk this evening about educational technology, but I'll let them illuminate that far better than I could.
Thank you, Dr. Brummett. So obviously, Craig and I work in tandem to provide educational technology experiences for not only our students, but also our staff. And before we get into talking about any of the numbers, I'd like to thank the board and the community for our transition to Parent Square this year has been absolutely tremendous in terms of improving our communication with all of our families across the board. And it's a great product, and we're going to continue to use it. And I see some folks out here nodding their heads, just seeing the importance of it. It was a big leap, and it's been great success, and I look forward to the continued success of it. So with Craig and I, with our budget, like Dr. Brummett just talked about, most of our hardware has been coming through the capital improvement plan, so it's not going to rely solely in this budget here. You can see our student device refresh with our 3 grade levels, kindergarten, grade 5, and grade 9. Our expansion of Wi-Fi coverage to the exteriors of buildings for improved security communications, and rolling out the refresh of additional staff devices, infrastructure, and instructional tools. And I'll turn it over to Craig now to speak more to any of the other changes that we had.
Yes, looking to the next year, primarily it's going to be hardware refresh and stay the course. There's nothing significant changing from an infrastructure perspective, other than some needs around the Anna Reynolds project. The biggest change will be the exterior Wi-Fi that goes and coincides with the school safety program we use for student evacuations, fire drills, things like that. So when they have exterior communications in such an event, it allows the teachers to be better in contact with the building leadership, district leaders, and our director of security.
I have a question for you there. Just recently, the governor passed a law providing grants for security purposes for schools. Is that something that you guys are working on?
I know I got the email when Dr. Brummett did, and I'll let her
Yes,
take that.
we have asked Michael Morgan, Director of Security, to review that for any implications for Newington. So we will apply as appropriate for that. So thank you for asking that.
Thank you.
So primarily, as Jay alluded to, the years past, many of the technology components were in our operating budget. With the advent of the Technology Capital Improvement Fund, we've been able to allocate as much as we can to that side of the house. There were a few items that we cut from next year's budget because we exceed next year's capital improvement allotment. We're hoping to see those devices or that equipment come through any realized savings this fiscal year. For example, some instructional display replacements. That's the ongoing refresh of classroom projection systems or replacing them with some type of other display in the classroom. And if you have any questions, I think we're ready for you. We'll do our best.
Any board members have questions? All right, go ahead, Ms. Sudbeck.
When you mentioned Anna Reynolds, those technology needs, is that under the Anna Reynolds budget for improve the rebuild, or does that go under here?
There's small components that we're taking out of our operating budget, things like patch cables and cords and miscellaneous supply items to bring the infrastructure alive. We're going to be reusing as much of the infrastructure as we currently have in the new building as well. There's very little extra growth that we need to meet the needs of the building. But the big core instructional components are being carried, I believe, in some of the building project budgets, such as new displays for the classrooms, things like that, the voice lift systems in the classrooms. That's in the project budget.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any further questions. You guys
Thank you
did a
very
great
much.
job. All right, now we're going to move on to the English language arts, looks like.
Ms. Kraus, you're up.
Okay, not as much fun now, but so this is our first, what we call one of the 5 core areas. So that'll be important when you look at the grant allocations. Some of our core staff are split across the 5 major programs, as are some of our grant positions. So when you look at that, you'll see we've indicated that. In English language arts, you'll see the goals are really focused on fluency and reading, writing, listening, speaking, and viewing, with the biggest focus being on lifelong learning, preparedness for work, and preparedness for enjoyment in life. You'll see that all of our curriculum is written on the Connecticut state standards, And you'll see a description of the K-8 level, which usually at the elementary level, we teach English language arts combined with our reading program. So we have a reading designation, writing, and word study. And then when you get up to the high school, you'll see that's where we have a 4-year sequence for students. Grades 9, 10, and 11 are a full year course. And then in grade 12, their students are able to sign up for 2 electives. And that leads right nicely into the program improvements, where we do have a plans proposal for a new elective we're moving forward called Survey of Contemporary Hispanic American Literature. You'll also see in the supplies, there's some updated curriculum resources to improve options for student choice when selecting text. That's been a big conversation we've had at the curriculum committee this year. And we do not have any program needs at this time that we're looking at that were not included in the budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any board members with questions? Mr. Leverrier?
Yes, thank you. So what are the supplies that are being requested with this budget, with that 132,000?
Yeah, we can't hear anything from you now, Mr. Leverrier.
All right. Hello, can you hear me? All right. Well, let me come back.
Okay. Any questions here at the table? Very good.
I did just one note on the very last page where I was referring to the grant allocations. That 3rd and 4th bullet were just duplicated. You can cross one of them out. That should just have been listed once. Where it says 5 core program split, estimated 18,200. That's a grant that was split across the 5 core areas to pay for kindergarten positions, and it just got listed twice there.
Ms. Weaver?
For the ESSER grant for the full-time ELA coach, is that at one school or across multiple?
That's at the high school.
Okay.
Ms. Wagner?
The the .10 non-certified position. What can you? I'm just trying to remember from last year, like the .10s and how that all factors together and what it would look like for ELA.
Oh, you're looking at the non-certified position in 119?
Yeah. Yes.
So that is, if you look on the back pages, that's the way they are spread across. And Lou can answer that better. It's custodian, security, cafes, all those are in there. So I don't know how that's split.
The allocation that you see there is for permanent building subs that were located in each building, and they are attributable to any program or any one building at that point. They are split up.
So we'll see that come up again, and if we see that .10, we should kind of know where. Okay.
Mr. Leverrier, go ahead.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. So I'm looking at code 600. We have, $100 and something thousand in a request here. All it says is supplies, code 611. Can you expand on that, please?
If you're looking at the 611 account. If you go to the last page, you can look under supplies, and we've listed there what those materials would be. So you have classroom library materials, Heinemann leveled books, foundations, consumables. So that's our word study program that I spoke to a couple meetings ago. So we have those are consumable supplies for the students. Nameplates for handwriting, magnetic tiles, dry erase boards, composition books, book pouches, pocket folders, sentence and syllable frames.
So what are the 3 biggest expenditures on this supplemental page here, making up that $100,000+ figure?
Classroom library materials, leveled books, and the consumables are the highest ticket items.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we can move on to the next one.
World language, and we have Kristen Freeman online. Go ahead, Kristen.
Good evening, everybody. The goal of the World Language Program is to support students with their communication. That includes reading, writing, speaking, and listening in our modern languages of Spanish, French, and Italian. We also offer Latin at the high school, and we're very excited at the possibility of offering Portuguese next year at Newington High School. The focus this year in World Language is on the use of spontaneous language. And we are proud to continue to host the recipients, awarding recipients with a seal of biliteracy by the time that they leave Newington High School. In the budget, you'll see that the requests primarily are comprised of expansion of text to support literacy in world language. We do have some digital resources for teachers, particularly at the middle level, that's called VOCES. And we also ask for funds to support professional membership and to support our students in taking the National Latin exam. With respect to future needs, I know this was also a topic at the curriculum committee, and Mr. Farisi mentioned this earlier as well. We are always looking to expand our world language offerings into the 7th grade so that the middle school experience can be a true full year of Spanish 1, and also to possibly expand to different world languages outside of Spanish at the middle level.
Any questions? Lou? Apologize, when I spoke a moment ago about the permanent building subs, I was looking at the wrong item. That's actually a 0.10 allocation of the secretarial support for the central office of that program. So my apologies to everybody. You'll see that several other times. Secretarial support. Yeah. Okay, okay. Thank you for the clarification. All right. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Freeman? Mr. Branda?
Just really quick, I know past curriculum meetings, we've had presentations on the seal of biliteracy, and I would just be curious, and not for now, I don't expect you to know this, but I would love to see kind of a chart of the past few years of how we've done throughout the years in terms of whether or not that number is really growing, because I do remember that one of the presentations I saw kind of highlighted the fact that we start so late, and that's why our numbers aren't where they could be. And I would just love to see kind of where we're at so that we can talk about potential and where we want to be.
All right, thank you. Ms. Weaver?
I would just expound upon that because I know one of the things that was astounding to a lot of us in the curriculum committee was that we're one of 2 school systems in our district reference group, us and Shelton, that do not have the 7th grade level, which is, you know, obviously we want to be leaders where we can. But I guess as well, could you just, as someone who's looking at not just this budget, but next budget, what we would need for the adding of the Portuguese for staffing, sorry. At the high school, yeah, the Portuguese class, if there is a staffing change.
There are no need to
Okay.
add staffing. It's strictly a curriculum writing
Okay,
charge.
thank you.
Go ahead.
And then to piggyback off of that, actually, because one of the things I was thinking was in terms of interest from students ahead of time for that sort of course, is that something that's already been surveyed out, or is the Portuguese class something that through plans went through and we're hoping kids get excited about it? How's that work?
I will let Kristen field that, but I believe there was some work done on interest in Portuguese, but I'll kick it to you for more information, Kristen.
The plans proposal was presented by the World Language Coordinator, Rosanna Vassal, and a World Language teacher, Sylvia Ribeiro. And in order to substantiate the request, it was purely based on student survey and interest, and that was the language that was most sought after from our students with respect to languages that are currently not offered.
Okay. Mr. Leverrier?
Oh, I hope you all can hear me. So I'm going by memory here, and if my memory serves me correct, based on our student rep presentations, we've had overwhelming growth in our Latin club. Have we considered potentially expanding the Latin program if there is an overwhelming interest?
All right, I'm not sure what you said. Your audio has gone out again. If
I
Kristen,
have
if you,
full, I have full internet service. Are you sure it's not on your end?
Dr. Fletcher, I did hear him. If Mr. Leverrier, if it's okay if I repeat his
Oh,
question and I can
go,
answer it.
of
please
course.
do. Go ahead.
So Mr. Leverrier had mentioned that at a prior Board of Education meeting, there was a student representative who was talking about the increased interest in the Latin Club and that there seems to be much more popular. And then he inquired whether or not we have looked at expanding the Latin program that we have at Newington High School to possibly serve students of that interest. To the best of my knowledge, we have never had to turn students away from a Latin course, and that we are able to provide seats for Latin for all students that request it, but I will double check that with Mrs. Vasal.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
So much.
All right, thank you for clearing that up, Ms. Freeman. Ms. Weaver?
Just a question about one of the dues, because I just noticed it was like a significant increase, if we're adding any on that. The 800 line. Yeah.
Dues and memberships.
Jessica, I'm not sure why there is why there's an increase. The only thing I can think of is that it's possible that we purchased some dues last year with realized savings, but I can look into that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on this category? Okay, Dr. Berman? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just kind of the periodicals is just the same question because 644 has nothing from last year and then almost $700 this year.
644.
Realized savings. Okay.
Yep,
Is that what it
it's
is?
indicated on the program detail.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Yes. All right. No other questions? I'm opening my eyes this time. All right, we can move on.
We are ready to talk about math with Wendy.
Okay, so the goals of the math program are really focused on not just the skills and concepts that are foundational to math, but more importantly, communicating math ideas, problem-solving abilities, and ensuring that students are ready to continue education after high school in any way that they might want to do. So again, our curriculum is aligned to the Connecticut core standards. In the elementary level, we do use a math workshop model. And at the high school level, you'll see while there is a state requirement to take Algebra 1, we offer a whole host of pathways through math. Students are able to self-select, and they do that with the guidance of the math department, their previous math teachers, and their school counselor. You'll see under the program improvements that, and that's why I mentioned the math workshop. The elementary level has focused on the math curriculum this year, and there was an identification of needs for enhanced math manipulatives for students to use during that time. So you'll see in the supply items, that's why there's an increase at the elementary schools. There's also an increase at the high school level, and that was because of a need for more calculators that they have to purchase every few years. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions? Yes, Ms. Weaver?
Are those the scientific calendar calculators?
I'm not sure.
Okay. That's one. Just because I know there's a big difference between a scientific and a graphing calculator.
Yes.
So I'm assuming it's the graphing calculator, but
I don't recall which one is in the budget.
Our favorite math teacher, Danielle Droz, go ahead.
So proud of Miss Weaver that she knows the difference between a graphic calculator and a scientific calculator. Wendy, the certified position that it was 46 and now it's 45.58. Is that from the grant funded instructional coach that's being eliminated, or
You're exactly correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there any other instructional coaches for math? In this budget?
No, not specifically for math. At the elementary and middle level, we have what we call an instructional coach. There's a literacy coach that oversees that side of the house, and then there's an instructional coach that supports math, but also science, social studies, all the special areas, everything else. So they're not specific to math. At the high school level, the one that we're paying for, you saw earlier in the English language arts budget, there is one coach there. We also are using ESSER funds to pay for a STEM coach at the high school level.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Ms. Wagner?
Sorry, I'm trying to squeak it out. I wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about the contracted $5.99, the contracted services, because it seems like there was quite a large increase. And I did look on the next page. It looks like it's like those online programs like IXL, the Desmos, but just wanted to see why it went up.
Yeah, we had paid last year, you might recall that there was a request for Desmos at the 6 to 8 level. We used grant funds to pay for that last year. It was cut from the budget. And the teachers have used it this year, requested that it stay in the operating budget, and that's why you see that increase there. In addition to the fact that the other ones that you see there, there were some increases in those prices as well.
What was the cost? Again, I know we talked about this last year for the Desmos program.
I have to look that up for you.
No problem. Sorry, cut you off guard. Sorry about that.
Ms. Weaver?
Yeah, I know this was our, I believe the spirit of Ms. Droz, she was talking about like the IXL and Desmos and defer to the expertise here. But I was wondering, is the IXL, I believe that comes with the curriculum components? Is that
It does.
one we have?
And we actually use IXL. You'll see that across several programs because we split that because we use it not just in math.
Okay.
So you'll see that split across some of the core areas.
Okay. And just follow up on the, again, the ESSER funded grant for the math interventionist. Is this something, again, for like the next budget year we're thinking? It's the one full-time one. Are we thinking we're going to need that for the following year, but it won't be funded? Is that the?
That will be a very big conversation because there's
Okay.
several positions in that grant that will fall under the same thing. That
Okay.
we have to be looking at those priorities.
Okay.
That particular position is, we had a math interventionist split between 2 of the elementary schools that
Okay.
are not Title I schools. This
Okay.
position allowed us to increase them both to full-time for the past few years, ever since the pandemic.
Okay.
And if we can't fund that, we would need to reduce that back to half-time at each building.
You said the elementary ones?
Chafee and Patterson.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. On another note,
Music with Kristen Freeman.
Hello again, everybody.
What?
Music, I'm sorry, could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Our music program aims to promote and improve student musicianship, as well as promote cultural, societal, and aesthetic values through music. Our primary expenses in the music department include the maintenance and drying cleaning of our marching band uniforms, and accompanist for concerts, of course, general music supplies, including lesson books and sheet music. We also have some communication tools that the music department uses, including charms and note flight. And within the elementary schools, most of the elementary school music teachers are enjoying using Spotlight on Music, which is an online learning platform that supports the implementation of the curriculum. There are some needs currently in the music department, and those include mostly instruments, specifically a violin and a trumpet. And there was also a request for a portable speaker that was cut from the budget as well.
Any questions?
Can someone donate that?
Go ahead.
This is for Mrs. Hud Wagner. Is that one instrument, like literally one violin, one trumpet, and one speaker? Or is it like a collection of them? Yeah, I did. I thought I had my mic on. Sorry. Do you hear me now, Mrs. Freeman? I don't think she
Yes,
hears
I'm
me.
sorry.
Oh,
I
cool.
thought
Okay.
that you said Miss Hutvander, and so I did not respond to you.
Oh, sorry. I'm because of her voice, I'm now her voice right now. So the question was just specific to whether or not that was a violin and a trumpet, or is it a collection of instruments that are in the program needs for future?
I think that it was more than one trumpet and one violin. Looking at the total price that was cut, it was a little over $10,000. So based on that price, it was probably a couple of each instrument.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Stradivarius.
That would be a little bit above our standard.
Yep, Miss Parati.
Kind of just going on that, how are the instruments provided? Like, do we own a whole bunch of instruments or are students renting them? Like, can you just explain how that works?
We currently own all of our, the vast majority of our instruments, and we provide them for student use. It does keep our music teachers busy in terms of just managing many of those instruments for the students. Students are welcome to rent instruments if they want from outside companies, but Newington Public Schools generally supplies those for our students. As students age and they become more proficient musicians, it's very common that students end up buying their own instruments because they want to own their own.
Very good. Any other questions? All right. Seeing no more questions on the music, we'll move on.
Wellness is up next, Miss Freeman.
The goal of our wellness program is to support all students in mastering the skills of the portrait of a graduate, communicator, thinker, and citizen, and doing that by achieving physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual wellness. Teachers in the program really seek to provide a safe and nurturing environment that celebrates and honors the diversity of our students. And one of the things that I think the wellness teachers would tell you that they're most proud of is that as the needs of our student population changes, particularly with respect to trends in health issues, our teachers are always looking to adapt curricular topics to make sure that they are addressing those needs. Within the budget, the vast majority of the funds are asked to maintain the life fitness equipment in our wellness centers, and the rest of it in the instructional supplies are typical supplies you would see in a gymnasium in order to keep young and adolescent students active, various balls and bats and any other kind of equipment for both cooperative and competitive games. The future needs that we are looking for is to just begin to phase out some of the old equipment and replace that with new equipment. And that is mostly to just make sure that that equipment maintains safe.
Ms. Weaver.
All right. So also thank you this is really helpful when we see the significant changes from last year's budget. We see like a $11,000 increase, but with realized savings. So I guess my question, and this is kind of up to anyone, in terms of what's the odds? Obviously, we appropriated 0 for the supplies last year, but it was purchased with realized savings. What's the odds we can do that this year?
That is hard to say right now, but always something we try to do if we can. So I don't know that I have a firm answer. Lou, do you want to venture a guess, or is that pure conjecture?
Well, I'm looking at the 0 appropriated for this year. I know we did a substantial amount of buying out of their budget in the spring of last year to get them everything they needed. So
I don't have a sense of exactly how much that was at this point. I have to go back and research that. But replicating it is an option. It would require the board's, and the superintendent to take action to buy out those items now and have them available for July 1st for the various schools, depending on where the resources need to go. That's more an anomaly. Usually it's very difficult for us to get to zero because certain things you really don't want to pick up until later in the year. You don't want something in July if you're not going to use it till the following May. So,
Yeah. I guess I just want to, for those in the public to understand because we keep saying, oh, we'll just have this in realized savings and all this stuff. I think just getting a realistic expectation, which is very difficult as we continue to budget, what that possibility could be, especially I know Dr. Brummett will likely be instituting a budget freeze in the near future.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. I've asked folks to submit their purchase orders, and then the tap is going to be shut down for a while, and that will give me a better picture with Lou's assistance as to how that would allow us to do any buy-aheads. But right now, we don't have a plan for them.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next one.
Reading with Miss Kraus.
Long before it was so popular and talked across the whole state, the Newington reading program was built on the science of reading. So you know a lot about this now, and if you look at those terms in that first bullet, you'll know that our curriculum is written to address print awareness, phonemic awareness, phonics, decoding, fluency, and comprehension. It's a comprehensive reading program, and we do use a workshop model at the elementary level, and combined with a word study block to achieve those goals. You'll see also included in the reading budget is the what we used to call the reading language arts consulting and now coaching services that we were referring to earlier, as well as reading intervention. And in our work that we've been doing this past year, one of the notable things at the elementary level was to expand our decodable text selections to support those foundational skills, particularly to ensure that the decodable texts were diverse and represented all students. That was a big identified need. They were quite dated. So that's where you'll see that increase. A program need that we're looking at in the future is to increase opportunities for co-teaching in our ELA classes at the secondary level. That is not included in the budget at this time. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Weaver.
It really nitpicky, but can you just explain the 0.01 increase in certified positions? Or is that a typo? It just goes from 43.52 to 43.53.
Oh, the 0.01. It's likely, Lou probably can respond better, but those always move around a little bit based on if a teacher is teaching, how many segments they're teaching and that kind of thing. Sections. So it's all how it falls once we break that down.
Mr. Brandon.
With regard to removing Lexia, is the reading A through Z replacing it, or what is replacing the Lexia work that's been done?
Yeah, thank you for that question. When we've used Lexia for quite a while. During the pandemic, we increased our use of it and we used a grant to increase that. We now are going to use the grant next year for all of Lexia. Our numbers are going down a little bit in Lexia, but we still have money in that ESSER grant. So we're going to move that to the grant, and that's why we were able to cut it out of the operating budget.
Any further questions? All right, very good. We can move on.
Moving on to science with Ms. Freeman.
The primary goal of the science program is to continue to align our curriculum to the NGSS and align instructional strategies to the 5E pedagogical model. We hope that we build foundational knowledge in physical, life, and earth science, as well as promote scientific literacy and ensure that all of our students are proficient in scientific and engineering practices. The vast majority of the budget requests fall under consumables, much like art. The science program does use plenty of materials that are consumed and need to be replaced every year. You will notice that there is an increase in, I think it's contracted services. Gizmos is an online learning platform that the science teachers use, and it needs to be renewed every 3 years. And this is one of the years that it is up for renewal. You'll also see that there's an increase in the amount for requests for supplies. And that's again because last year we had numerous supplies that were purchased with realized savings. One of the needs of the science program, and this is going to come up in my next program presentation for STEM, there was a request for an additional teacher that would partly support reduced class size in science and also partly support additional aerospace sections. So that would be a current need in the science program.
Very good. Do we have any questions? Ms. Weaver first, and then Mr. Pilati.
Just in terms of the supplies, because there was an increase of 22,000 at the high school. Just curious which program that alluded to.
That is because the vast majority of supplies were purchased with realized savings at the end of last year.
That's what I just want to make sure was part of that. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Parati.
Thank you. So for the program needs, what can you just touch on the supplies that are not included that are needed or that you would have wanted? Like, what are we missing from this budget?
There are not necessarily any kind of instructional supplies that are missing from that program. And in fact, the only things that were cut by the superintendent, there were some periodicals called Science News. We call those sort of nice to haves to enhance the program. And there is a presentation that is offered by Jem Mandel, who's our environmental science teacher, called Birds of Prey. And folks from the organization come in and do presentations about different variety of birds that are popular in Connecticut. So right now, those are the only things that were cut from the budget. The biggest need, again, is with additional staff to reduce our class size.
Thank you.
Ms. Weaver.
I'm sorry if I missed this. Do you know what the replacement equipment that was cut was supposed to be? It should be the 700 under property. It's like $7,000.
Looks like that's zero.
And it's zero. I just was wondering, it was a request, so I just was wondering if.
Yeah, I can just,
Yeah.
while they're looking it up, I'll just share the reason it's not on the sheet is it was cut at the building level. That was an initial request. It didn't make it to program request, so it didn't even come to the superintendent's attention as a cut, and that's why it's not on the listed over on the other page.
Okay, Mr. Leverrier.
What is the cost of the teacher that you're looking for to reduce the class sizes?
I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Jacomowitz.
Can you repeat the question for us, please?
Sure. Mr. Leverrier is asking what it would be the cost of an additional teacher to support reduced class size in a science program. And I'm wondering if the best thing that Luke could do is just to provide us with the average cost of a new teacher, knowing that this potential new staff would be spread between those two programs.
For our traditional hiring target for generic or generalist K-8 is master's 3 level, which is, somewhere in the mid to upper 50s for a starting salary. For individuals who are subject specific certified as in science or technology or STEM or anything like that, we're usually talking in the 80,000 plus range to acquire the talent for that particular job. And then if it's the recruiting, obviously based on full-time employment for somebody. So you can ask Steve how difficult it is to hire any fractional staff members. you know, to just cover one or two classes, typically we have to make an investment for specialists in the higher science areas of full-time positions, and they're highly sought after. So their market price is substantially higher than generalists as teachers.
So is that when you're saying higher, are we talking higher than the 80 figure?
As far as a target number, I would say you would need to have an expectation of paying $85,000 to $90,000 for somebody of that caliber as a full-time science teacher.
I mean, do you think, and I guess maybe Kristen, this is more appropriate for you. I mean, do you think that this is the kind of position here that's going to help our test scores? Because I mean, I want to make sure that our test scores are going up next year. Is this the kind of position that maybe we would be able, with the cross between math, science, that we'd be able to get our test scores up?
I think that's a very complicated question, Mr. Lervier, because getting test scores up, I'd want to know more about specifically what subject areas you're talking about, what levels you're looking at. When we start talking about the needs of high school students, I think it's important to consider that when a student, for example, takes a test like the NGSS in 11th grade, that is the compilation of literally 11 years of learning of that student from K all the way up through 11th grade. It's not necessarily just the high school. A test like the NGSS also relies on a student's problem-solving skills, mathematical skills, and certainly their reading skills. So when I think about improving test scores, I often think about improving student learning overall, not necessarily to a subject. With that said, I don't think that there is an educator in the room that would ever turn down staff to reduce class size and say that that's not going to be a benefit for our student learning.
All right. Well said. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Any further questions from anyone in the room? No more online? Okay, we can move on.
Excellent. We are moving on to STEM with Ms. Freeman.
I'm on a roll here. STEM is the interdisciplinary teaching of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, rather than treating each of these as individual curricular areas. As most of you know, in the middle school, we offer a STEM exploratory, and that is for students in grades 5 through 8. That's part of their encore or their elective cycle. And then our two middle schools are very proud to host our Biomedical Academy and our Aerospace Academy. Those two programs, Biomed and Aerospace, continue up to Newington High School so that students can continue their study. When we look at the budget and what is requested, one thing that I want to point out is that there is an error in the program details, specifically under contracted services, 599, the CPR training and certification, and the OSHA training. Those were both cut. You'll see that they are listed as cut items, but they're also listed as requests. Those can be crossed off as requested items. Beyond that, under contracted services, we use IXL for grade 9, and Project Lead the Way is a program that we use for our students at Newington High School in the aerospace program. The vast majority of the other asks are the supplies to support all of the project-based learning at both the middle schools and also the high school. And finally, we do incur some fees for various competitions like Cyber Patriot and Invention Convention. As we look toward future needs, as has already been mentioned, there is a need to be able to offer aerospace classes to more students. Unlike Latin, where we do not have to turn students away, when we look at our aerospace classes, we sometimes are not able to offer the class to all students the year that they request it. In addition to that, we will be looking at a future need of replacing some of the 3D printers at the middle level for the aerospace program.
Go ahead, Ms. Weaver.
Question about the last line on dues and memberships. We didn't request anything this year, but we had like 4,800 allocated last year. I'm just curious if we backed out of something else? Or,
I'll be honest, I'm not sure why that was cut. Well, it was reduced from 5260 down to 460. Is that what you're saying too, Jessica?
yeah, the line above it, it had a dues and membership line for the high school for 4,800, and then it's just 0 this year. So I just wasn't sure if we backed out, just kind of in my line of thought, because we had 4,800 allocated last year, and then we're cutting the CPR and training in OSHA. Just curious.
Just to clarify, Kristen, it's not a cut. That was,
It's
what
not a
she's
cut.
saying
It's,
is
yeah,
this
it's,
year we appropriated 4,800 at the high school, and now there's nothing appropriated, but they didn't request it. There was no initial
Right.
request, so it could be that that person no longer saw the need for that dues and membership that they were using.
yeah,
it
I just
for.
wasn't sure what that program was, and then also kind of where our options were for the CPR certification and OSHA training.
Yeah, that one I can't answer. The CPR and OSHA certification, when Ms. Friesen and Ms. Spiller put in that request, they did not list it as a priority. Priority items are things that are needed to run the program as is. So what will happen is that the students will have to incur the costs of those certifications if they seek them.
Okay. Mrs. Drozd?
Kristen, please don't be upset. I'm just really curious. I've always been curious about this. Has there ever been any kind of analysis of the STEM program and the benefits, going back to what Richard said with like the test scores? I've always questioned like the academies, and they're great for the 25, 50 kids who are in them. Has there ever been like a longitudinal study of the kids who go through the academies? Now, obviously it's a different type of kid who might choose to go through the academy, but how those kids, how they achieve on their SBAC in 8th grade, how they achieve on their SATs in high school. I'd just be curious about, the STEM program is an expensive program and what those benefits are to the school district. And you don't have to have that information right now. If you don't have it, it's fine.
Phew, good to know. Ms. Rhodes, I'm sure that we can pull that data. One thing that I would caution, but you've alluded to this already, the profile, so to speak, of a student that generally enrolls in those classes might not be typical of the general population of Newington High School. So it's possible we'll see some skewing. That is especially true in the aerospace program that is very dominant in mathematics. So generally our students who enjoy mathematics and are very adept at mathematics take those, but we can certainly find out if we can get some kind of average SAT and SBA scores for students that have participated.
Okay. Wendy, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to clarify too, for the general listener, that the STEM program does include the academies, but also includes STEM Exploratory, and every middle school student participates in STEM Exploratory.
Thank you. Ms. Weaver?
Yeah, so the CPR and OSHA thing's kind of bugging me. Not gonna lie, because I kind of want it in there, but just as a general statement. But I'm just wondering too, because I received CPR and OSHA training from Parks and Rec when I was a camp counselor. So just wondering if there is any opportunity for us to partner with any of our town services on those types of deals, just because when we do this budget, we obviously want to take the burden off the taxpayer and the students themselves. So I just feel like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul when we take it out and then have the students still pay for it. So just curious if we could explore those options, because I know that our town does offer them for our student counselors. So
I'm not aware of what the town offers. I suspect that if the town is offering CPR certification to potential school counselors, that the town is in fact paying for that, because those counselors are going to be working for the Parks and Rec department. So that is the fee that I think is associated. Is you have to pay somebody from, say, like the American Red Cross to come and train people. And then you also have to pay for registration, and then just registering with either the American Heart Association or the other organization to get the actual certificate. And that would hold true for OSHA as well. So I don't think that Parks and Rec is kind of quote unquote free. My guess is that the Parks and Recs department just covers that cost for the students who participate as counselors.
Yeah, they do. And we got paid for it, which was wonderful. So just wondering if there was any kind of collaboration we could have, like if we already had students in there and we could play a group rate or something, I don't know, just to be able to, because I just think like students that are in this obviously want to pursue that. So I just want to make sure those needs are met. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on.
Well, you're on a roll, Kristen. How about social studies?
Social studies, ultimate goal in social studies program is for students to learn how to be contributing members of a local and global society. We want our students to act ethically and responsibly, and we want them to be able to understand multiple and diverse perspectives. Our social studies framework is aligned with our social studies curriculum is aligned with the 3C framework, which focuses on student inquiry and supports our students in skills of researching, reading, and writing, as well as providing foundational knowledge in all aspects of social studies, civics, history, economics, and geography. The coordinator of social studies, Luz Antonio, has partnered with the coordinator of English, Sarah Whalen, and I think that Wendy mentioned this before. We are looking forward to, within the humanities department, which is social studies and English, to provide a survey of Hispanic American literature next year, which we're excited about. If you look at the program page for budget requests, the vast majority of supplies fall at the elementary level, less so at the middle and high school level. At the secondary level, the budget requests are more of our informational texts, historical fiction, and other periodicals that support the implementation of the curriculum. IXL is also used at the middle level for social studies as well. Right now, the need, I'm sounding like a broken record, is any kind of additional staffing that would help reduce class size, but also to increase the opportunities for electives. And I know that we talk about this every year, especially at the high school. We cannot possibly run every single elective that we offer. We'd have classes with maybe 4 students in it. But if there were more staff, we would probably be able to expand some of the number of offerings and certainly the number of sections that we have in those electives.
Any questions? Okay, I don't see any. We'll move on.
All right, we're shifting gears over to special education, and Marlena, you're up. There she is.
Good evening, everybody. And again, thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight to present our special education budget. So we'll start off with our major goals are to educate all of our students with disabilities to the maximum extent possible with their age-appropriate peers. To support each child by providing equal access, participation, and progress in all major developmental areas. To support each child in awareness of career opportunities available to help the student to acquire the necessary work habits and attitudes necessary to be successful in life. So as you see, our program description continues to rise in numbers. Our student who are identified with special education have increased. Thank you, Dr. Brummer, for sharing that information at the beginning. It really does show the areas that we have really put a lot of effort into supporting our students across the board, and having that opportunity to be able to service all of our students and most of our students within the least restrictive environment, whether that means in our district or in specialized programs. So some of our students do attend magnet schools. Some are in specialized programs outside of our district. And remember that we also do service some students in the town of Newington who attend our private parochial schools. So there's some extended number of students that we are responsible for, even though they are not in our schools, that might be reflected in this budget. And of course, our services start when children turn 3, and they now continue to the age of 22 when they age out of our transition program. So our program needs and development, we're really looking to provide our paraprofessional educators with as much training as we can so that they can continue to provide a high level of service to our students. They are an incredible group of individuals who work very, very closely with our students with curricular adaptations and even behavioral supports in the classroom. So we want to make sure that they're highly skilled. We are increasing the number of our registered behavior technicians, who again are a specially skilled set of paraprofessionals. Our tuition has increased, but we are trying to offset that with our open choice enrollment and with supplementing with our pre-K general education students. We continue to fund our Effective School Solutions, which again, we had Effective School Solutions come and do their report card. Their services have been invaluable as we're seeing so many more students with mental health crises. And then we would like to increase our administrative staff by adding an additional assistant director for special education. Currently, we have a retired special education administrator who is working as our out-of-district coordinator. She is looking to retire for real this time. She came back and she helped us out for a little bit doing this part-time, but she really is looking to retire. And looking at our services and needs overall, we feel that it would be best to increase that position to a 1.0 special education assistant director. Our program needs funding for additional special education and related service staff. Again, we're looking at students with hearing impairments, students with mental health issues. So those related services personnel will need to be looked at moving forward. We would like to implement comparable compensation packages. Our current paraprofessionals do not get benefits, and we are consistently losing our special education paraprofessionals to other towns that have benefits. So that's something we'd like to look at for the future. We'd also like to look at increased funding to support salary and benefits for our non-certified staff as well. Okay, so if you look at the budget is pretty consistent to what we have had in the past. The majority of our budget is on consumables and for areas that we have to fund in order to meet the students' programming, which would include evaluations, consultants, professional development. And if you take a peek you'll see our significant changes. A lot have to do with, again, just that cost of living and fees that have increased. A typical evaluation that used to cost $3,000 is costing about $5,000 now. So you might see some increases in those areas. But overall, we're doing the best that we can to reduce like our paper protocols. We're doing a lot more online testing, so buying subscriptions and reducing more of the paper protocols that we were using for students. But when we do our testing for students, it also requires sometimes that they do some writing, so some paper protocols are still required. Any questions?
Mr. Sharma.
Hey, I just had a quick question on the Transition Academy you're talking about. You have 8 students. Is that like a state law or something that we need to support them?
The transition?
Yes. And how much
Yes.
did we spend?
I don't believe that we have that parceled out, but those students, if we did not have that program in-house, we would have to outplace those students to an outside transition academy. and that price would be 8 times what we're spending. So yes, it is mandatory that we educate the students until they age out at 22.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Danielle Drost, go to you.
How much would it affect the department if that new administrative position, like, would it be status quo if it wasn't added, or, and I'm confused because it says 3 to 4, and I know you probably explained it, but I thought it was only adding a half.
It's only funding a half. Half is already previously funded.
Okay, so right now it's 3.5 and you're looking for another half.
Right.
How would that look? Why would that be so necessary? Like, how, I know that at a board meeting, Dr. Brumman had said that teachers were stressed, and when they said that it would help. So I guess I'm questioning how an administrator would help the teachers.
So it would be that hands-on support, right? So help with PBTs, so again, remember that we have students who are magnet schools, so we have to provide an administrator to go to magnet schools. We need to have administrators oversee PBTs at Emmanuel Christian, at the outplacements. So right now we are taking ourselves away from the district in order to be able to meet all of those needs. So if we were to redistribute that within ourselves, we would even be less accessible to the teachers in our own, within our own schools.
So it would be so it wouldn't change the way it is this year. It would just make it better for next year.
For this year, it would not change because we're not adding anybody for this year. So right now I am 2 days a week at the middle school. So right now there are things that have to get done, but we're supporting our teachers. We need to be there. We're with our increasing numbers. If you've noticed from Dr. Brumman had shared the numbers in the past, when I first started, we were around 500 students. We are now almost at 700 students. So, and the administrative staff has stayed about the same. So that's that many more PBTs, that many more, professional development that needs to happen at the school level, the supports for PBTs, all of those things, that need to be covered by an administrator. Those needs just keep increasing.
Okay, Ms. Parati?
Thank you. Can you just clarify, did you say the half a support that we have this year is actually retiring? So she is leaving the district as of the end of this year?
Yes.
Okay, so I would imagine that I think you said she was kind of on a contracted basis, so she's not like a full-time employee, obviously. So I would imagine that it would be a lot easier and obviously more effective to hire an actual full-time position instead of having to replace that half, because I would hate to see her leave and then obviously, like you said, you and everybody else be more stressed. But I think, and then earlier today, I thought that there was a conversation about a full-time versus a partial employee, staff, in this case, admin. So I think too, the cost of hiring a half potentially is not as effective as a whole administrator.
And just to clarify, the other half, the half that exists now is in the board's budget already. The other half is going to be funded by a grant. So that is really no increase to the board's budget. There's an FTE increase, but that grant will cover the cost of that individual, that other half.
Thank you for that clarification. Go ahead.
Does that go ahead to me?
Oh.
You said go ahead, Dr. Fletcher. Who go ahead?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Rose.
I just wanted to make sure. So if that the grant funded position, could that money go to a different position? Like, it doesn't have to be with the grant, does it have to be to special ed?
That is correct. The grant monies could be used for other things because it's coming out of open choice monies.
Right? Is that the end of your question, Ms. Drost? All right, Ms. Hut Wagner?
Correct. It is last fall.
One thing I'm hearing mentioned, I think is important that is that our students that go to magnet schools or parochial schools outside of the Newington district may have an IEP 504, need a Newington Public Schools administrator to run those meetings, which adds to the necessity for this additional FT. Wondering if, perhaps not today, but in the future, we could get a number of how many of our students that go out of district are students with IEP. So just what is that caseload burden that a teacher would have, or that this administrator would have to run those and manage those caseloads, if I'm correctly articulating that.
Yep, I understand that question. We can get that for you.
Right, and right now, currently, I don't think that I have the parochial numbers, but currently we have 54 students who attend magnet schools with IEPs. So that's at least 54 meetings that we have to be out of district for.
Are there any other questions? Ms. Weaver?
Just a question. This might be clarification for Wendy or Lou in terms of how it was placed, but I know we went from 42.2 to 43.4 for certified positions. Are we adding any special ed full-time, or am I missing that? Is that the increase with the FTE, but grant funded? That makes sense. Not sure who that question would be for.
Go ahead,
That
Lou.
is yes, but it's a combination of what's happened
happening?
through the grants.
Okay.
So I don't.
So it's like a
have that.
combination of the plus 0.55 plus, like it's dispersed through the grants here as well, if that's correct. The increase of the
Right. I mean, if you
1.2.
look at the first page of the special ed.
Yeah.
Where it has 3.00, realistically, you should view that as 3.45, even though the person who is currently doing the job is not eligible to be a member of the administrators union because they're retired. You know, they've been paid as a outside contractor to do that, but they're filling the role of a 0.45. So the increase in bringing that position back to full-time as a everyday administrator will bring it up to the 4.0. On the 42.2 to 43.2, I would have to go back and review it, but I remember there were probably 3 or 4 personnel transactions which aggregated to that differential. That's here. We'd have to get you that detail.
Okay, and just to follow up on that, the non-certified salaries, because I know that's a combo. I just don't have last year's combo in there, so just trying to because we have 3 ASME, 4 BCBA in the 119 section, and that last one just kind of doubles. So I just was wondering if you could kind of break that down. Not at this time, it's totally fine, but just like that breakdown of that one line item for the, it's 119, the 30 as in the admin district area, where I know we're taking different buckets, but I just wasn't sure if there's a little more breakdown on that.
Answer that one.
Right now? Oh my gosh, okay.
1 second here.
Sorry, just gonna ask it.
What's that? Okay. All right. Are there any other questions while they're researching that?
I can answer part of it.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, the 0.7 in the 111 is for a physical therapist who was hired last year on that basis for us. The other, we have 1.0 physical therapist plus the 0.7 physical therapist. We have 1 1.0 occupational therapist, and 1, 2, 3 BCBA, or, yeah, be 3 BCBAs. I mean, kind of, that got you to the number 6.7 there, plus 3 AFSCME employees.
Yeah, I guess I was just asking because it also has the codas as the hourly, so I was just wondering
In the hourly.
if these are like added, I'm just wondering like the makeup of how that adds to the doubling of it. Like what was in there before, and then these are, I guess, these are the additional ones. Just trying to get the like before and after, if that makes sense, of what's in that account. I'm assuming it's the AFSCME that like,
Are you looking at the hourly people, or are you looking at the contract staff?
both. I think those are new to this program description, so that's just what I was trying to get. But I think what you're saying makes sense to me, so.
That staffing that I just spoke of is the
Yeah.
Occupational therapist.
Yep.
It was here last year. It's the same
So this year.
Yeah.
And so the additional would be like the AFSCME and the codas that weren't in there last year.
They were in there last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then,
Those would be on the hourly part of it.
okay,
And that's the same staffing as we've had.
okay. I'm just wondering then how it doubles from 87 to 160. It's the 87 to 164, this part. So we're just going off.
That's just at the central office for non-certified staff.
Okay. So it's this section. I'm just writing.
All right, so we have 1.0.
The 1.7.
3 secretaries charged to the special ed department.
Yep.
4.
Four.
So that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 200,000 for that.
Okay.
What's the number that you're looking to get to?
164. So I'm just not sure. That's what I said. You can come back with it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It's like where things are coming from.
Yeah. All right, so we'll go on to Mr. Sharma.
Hey, just a quick question. Any special ed services that we outsource right now? Could we like possibly move them like in-house and it could be cheaper, or not a possibility?
I think that we do as much as we can in-house. The consultants and the providers that we utilize, like a neuropsychological or a psychiatric, need to get done by certifications of staff that we do not have. So if we were to bring that in-house, that would mean more staffing. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
All right. Any further questions for special ed? Ms. Parati?
I just have a question on, you had mentioned that a bunch of meetings are held outside of Newington and, or even travel within Newington. Is that the travel expenses, are those outside of this budget, or are they it's in here somewhere?
Question, where do we allocate travel expenses for special ed? I know it's part of their contract, but where is that housed? Mileage?
For the itinerant teachers?
No, like for special ed administrators when they travel to and from an outplacement or a magnet school or a parochial.
Well, in their contract, they have a mileage allowance that's there. That's charged to employee benefits when they get their once-a-year payment. Then they're responsible to account for all the miles they drove during the year. If they come in underneath the mileage allowance, it becomes a add-on to their W-2 as additional income for themselves. If they're over, it's just, there's nothing that happens.
Okay, so that's in the.
Within their benefits package.
Somewhere. Okay, perfect, thank you.
Exactly, right on the number.
Thank you. All right. All right, let's move on to the next one.
All right.
Homebound, and it looks like that's Mr. Farisi.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brummett. The major goal of Homebound is to provide for the continuous education for our homebound students. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Homebound instruction, students can be placed on homebound instruction for primarily three different reasons. Homebound instruction is provided temporarily to students who are ill or who have emotional or physical needs that are unable to attend school for a period of 3 weeks or longer, as diagnosed by a physician or a psychiatrist. So instruction can take place in the hospital if needed, or it could take place in a commonly agreed upon location. Students are also placed on homebound instruction through a PPT process. And lastly, students can be placed on homebound instruction when they are expelled from school. And for that, we know that I think back in around 2018, for those of you board members who work on this, we have to create a individual learning plan for those students and provide homebound instruction accordingly. Homebound instruction is a kind of provided by our staff at a contracted rate that's outlined in the NTA teacher's contract of $40.40 an hour. We've had significant challenges finding staff to provide homebound instruction, and that's put us in a difficult spot. It was such a burden that was assumed by our school counselors to actually oversee it as well. So we spoke earlier to the need of our students, and often there's lines out the doors for our counselors and their services. Yet oftentimes you'll find them trying to solicit teachers to provide homebound instruction as our numbers for homebound continuously increase. So we did work with the Teachers Association this year to improve the rate of $40.40 an hour after some feedback that we received that a higher rate might help with that. So we will be going to and piloting $55 an hour this year. And to alleviate some of the burden from the school counseling staff, we are also putting in a stipend position for a homebound chair. So the chair or coordinator would be managing the acquiring of staff to then teach our students who are out on homebound, the management of them, and the ability to kind of organize and oversee the program to make sure that students are receiving the hours that they're supposed to. So that is what you will find as the increase in this program from $40.40 to $55. Increases quite a bit when our numbers are continuously going out for students who are either expelled or on homebound services. If you look at the last 3 years of trend data, back in 2019, 2020, we were a little bit lower. Last year, there was a significant spike, and this year we're trending almost where we landed last year in the end of the year right now. So we are in a position where the needs keep increasing. So the demand is there. We have to meet that demand. And so in order to accommodate our children, we have to make some adjustments to the program. And that's what you see in the increases from last year to this year. I'll pause there for a moment and see if you have any questions.
Ms. Wagner?
Does the person providing the education to service have to be a certified staff member? Just, thinking about our paras, they are educators. I know they're not certified, but just wondering about if there's any regulations or policy.
It's a great question. It's one that we explored too when we weren't sure and we were looking at ways to find additional staff. But yes, you do have to be a certified teacher. And so some of our staff that are not in the teachers union do hold a Connecticut certification, even though they are not employed with us in that capacity. But right now it's also in our teacher's contract that a certified teacher has first rights to that work. Go ahead.
As a follow-up, does it have to be a Newington public school teacher, or could there be somebody who has perhaps retired from teaching but is still certified, or someone who teaches in another district? I'm just kind of thinking, I'm sure you exhausted all these efforts, but.
No, we appreciate it. And we additionally, maybe before you ask the question, I'll even say we're looking at online services too. So there's a lot of options that we're investigating. Yet again, in our teacher's contract, it would say that our first opportunity has to go to our teachers. And then if no one is available, we can explore the options that you're bringing up, both other certified staff from other possibly districts or retired, as well as Dr. Brummett and I have been exploring some programs that might be or I should say online services. They're not programs, they're online services. Yep. Tutorial services. So, yes, so we are doing that as well.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Drozd?
All right, so Steve, I'm looking at the numbers you said, and I did quick math. It's not like Lou Giacomo, it's math. So 83,000 divided by 40 is like 2,075 hours. So at $50, increasing that to 55 brings it to $114,147, which leaves like $22,000 difference. Can I please tell me that that's not the stipend that you're offering up? And if not, how many more hours, how many more hours, are we really talking that we would need to fund?
Right, so we are our hours in total. So if you just think about where we landed last year, it was over 1,255. This year, we're already trending higher than that. So we have to manage that. Additionally, the chair would be receiving the $55 an hour at approximately 10-hour a week workload. So that would make up that difference as well. I'm sorry, I think you might be on mute.
I was just saying, okie dokie. I like,
Thank you.
I got my pencil trying to figure out, this is a big budget, so.
And I
Thank
think the coordinator position it's hard to pinpoint how much that'll be. I think it's going to ebb and flow from week to week, but we had to make projections based on our best educated guess.
All right. Thank you. No further questions here. We can now move on to continuing adult education.
And I am going to pretend I am Kim Davis and share with you adult education.
Not how you've changed.
Thank you for humbling. Thank you. My voice deepens as the day gets. But if you would turn to the next grade tab, that is your adult or continuing education adult education program. And the continuing adult education program is organized into two components. One is the state mandated program that offers the high school credit diploma program, GED prep and testing, adult basic ed, English for speakers of other languages, and citizenship. The second component is the enrichment course offerings that are open to the general public. All budget requests are aligned to the program goals and needs, which meets all of the state requirements and the guidelines. So if you look across on the right-hand page, I can just share with you immediately two of the differences that you'll see. Otherwise, the program is remaining very similar. But you'll see the printing cost has gone up a little bit on 550. And that's just due to the program flyers that we print out and the increase in cost to those that we provide to the public. So that way they can, kind of get exposed to the adult education program and be able to sign up for the courses. And then in the 611, it goes up just a little bit. Supplies for inflation. That's really just something you've heard in other programs. But that would be kind of why those are going up just a hair. Otherwise, we are staying pretty similar. Otherwise, still staying with the 11 teachers to teach all the core areas. We have math, social studies, science, English, school counselor, art, ESL beginning, ESL intermediate, GED math, citizenship, GED LA, and GED or ESL advanced as well. So those meet all the state guidelines and the criteria for the coursework that we have to offer.
Ms. Weaver.
Yeah, just as always, curious at the level of the program in terms of numbers? Are we trending upward, downward? And
No, we're pretty flat. Like we're doing well. We're staying stable. Is enrollment, you mean, correct? Yeah, we're stable in enrollment. Our enrichment courses are running, the ones that are being put out there. So that's great. So yeah, everything's kind of just running stable.
Any other questions? Did you have more?
I do not, unless you want more.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Myers, the most patient gentleman in the room this evening. He couldn't have run faster over to the mic when it was his turn, so.
My pleasure.
Non-athletic and athletic activities. It's all yours.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for, again, I would just like to thank the board for their continued support of, the many activities that we provide, both athletic and non-athletic. I think it's really critical that we, recognize, we went through all of our core areas, but also the way that students engage with our school communities is so critical, and the activities that we provide, which are vast, really allow kids, maybe that don't have a connection to get that deeper connection and then, stay with us and thrive. So, the first piece of this is the non-athletic student activities area, which is, all contract negotiated. So they're extra and co-curricular activities that provide our students with experiences, that support our day curriculum, but also, enrich after that. So when you look at kind of these activities, you're looking at two pieces. They're B2 and B4 activities. B2 are specific listed in the contract. So these will be things like student government, yearbook, things that yearly we need individuals to make sure that we can provide the experiences. The B4 is, you'll see some of the same, but it does offer each school monies that they can use if different ideas come about. I'll give you an example at the high school. We have a current events club that popped up this year. Group of students had a great idea, had an advisor that wanted to support it, and they felt like it was, critical for students to be able to have a voice. A trivia club, kids felt like they wanted to get together and have an opportunity to throw out some trivia and have different events. So these are just, examples, things that also go along with it are Spanish club, which are, yearly clubs that we do support. So again, there's not much change that goes about because these are contracted, but they're so supportive of our students and their engagement with our communities. Does anybody have any questions on those?
All right, I don't see any questions or hands raised, so we can move on.
All right. So the next is student activities athletics. So just to give everybody a background, so we are a member of the largest conference in the state. It's a Central Connecticut Conference. It's a 31 school conference. It's highly competitive. And we do offer every sport that the CIAC, which is the state governing body, offers. So if a student athlete comes to our school, they're able to participate in every sport that they would like to under CIAC regulations. We do offer extensive programs. We have 61 coaches that really work diligently throughout the school year in 3 separate seasons, fall, winter, and spring. As you go to, our dollar amounts, most of our things do stay relatively regular. I think that additional page was fantastic just to kind of give everybody an idea of where these line items kind of fall. You'll see, again, staffing is based on the positions that we offer in our contract. Your 440, you kind of see some of the rental items. There's a jump in the contracted services that you might see, and you'll see that that's, some of that's for EMS coverage and in our athletic trainer coverage. Athletic training services are becoming very scarce. It is very difficult to find athletic trainers just because of the nature of the position. Colleges are not graduating athletic trainers at a very high rate. Right now, we contract with Select Physical Therapy, which has done a great, we've really built a great partnership with them to provide a connection with our student athletes to rehab and make sure that our student athletes are able to get back safely into activity. But in order to offer those
or continue that relationship, Select Physical Therapy, needs to bump up their expected, payment from us, mainly because they're struggling to find folks, similarly to many areas. But athletic trainers specifically are leaving. There are many schools that have to pay really per diem based on their events. So they don't have somebody who's there in the school. And those of you that have kids, I'm sure if they played sports and they were ever to see a trainer, the relationship between a student athlete and a trainer is vital in that individual's ability to rehab. Very similar to an adult that goes to a physical therapy location, having a connection with the individual that's doing that work, allows you to be a little more confident in that recovery. So that's one of the areas. We're also now paying for EMS football coverage. Previously, we had not through the volunteer services. Now we have a small fee per game that they've asked us to pay, which I think is acceptable. It's definitely below other towns and what they're paying for EMS coverage, and it just makes sure that we can organize and run our football games to acceptable standards. So I guess at that juncture, I'd turn over to any questions that anybody may have.
Ms. Weaver.
Question. Does anything change? I know in the budget, it didn't change with the tennis center, given the closure.
Yeah. So, it's going to be one of the bigger challenges is, Rocky Hill is still an option for us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're really just renting court time and then,
Okay.
We might have to shuttle some folks over.
Yeah.
The challenge is it's just not as convenient.
Right. I was just more like thinking, do we need to add things for transportation costs and those kinds of things, or?
Getting the transportation timing won't actually be a drastic difference.
Okay.
Even though you're talking about computer, a lot of times, we have to have a few more shuttles.
Okay.
But honestly, our tennis folks, have done a great job of utilizing our outdoor courts when they can, or utilizing the gym when they can. We use the tennis center if it's absolutely necessary. We just need to, fingers crossed, we keep the weather going as it is and we can get out there.
You and me both, it's close to my heart. And just about new equipment, batting cage net, football scoreboard, baseball scoreboard, not in our budget, like a pre-cut, but wondering too if there's any, we obviously had interest, I think, with the soccer to get local business to pay, like Turgeon Jewelers paid for some of it. Is there any solicitation happening for local businesses, or is this like separate, like the electronic, we can't get businesses to pay for it type of deal?
So, I mean,
I can speak to the football field scoreboard.
Yeah.
That's been on order for 5 or 6 months. It should
Okay.
be installed as soon as the weather is okay in the spring. I can't remember what the deal is with baseball.
the baseball scoreboard is one, it's functioning.
Okay.
It's just not ideal.
Got it.
So it is something that we're looking to upgrade. So the main idea of putting it in here is just to make sure it gets on people's radar. And if it was able to be replaced,
Got
it is something that, one of these
On our
days,
radar, yeah.
we're going to go turn on the lights and the lights aren't going to come on.
Okay, and it does say we did purchase the basketball shot clocks with realized savings, so
Yeah.
we're good to go with CIAC regulations.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's really the main reason why we had to do that so immediately. That's something that came about. It's been in discussion for a while. There's been hesitancy to make the move, but we are going to have a shot clock now at all of our girls and boys varsity basketball games. It's an optional to use it at the JV or freshman level.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, online, Mr. Leverrier.
Hey, Mr. Myers. Just first of all, just as a commentary, I am a personal injury lawyer. I've done a lot of business that has involved Select PT, and I do think that they do a really good job, and I understand that their prices are going up. I'd like Jessica asked a really good question. Maybe we could look to them to see if we could get some sort of discount on further services. Maybe we can give them some kind of ad. I don't know if that's like a conflict or whatever, but I mean, have we explored maybe getting a discount with their services if we maybe give them a free ad or two? I don't know.
Was that in regards to the, sorry, Mr. Leverrier. Oh, Select Physical Therapy?
Yes.
Yeah, because what they're doing is, from their side, they're paying their, contracted employee. A lot of times, Select's trainer will, there's a certain amount of hours that they dedicate to us, and then they actually work in their home office for the additional time to carry out, to fulfill that contract. So, you know, that contractual obligation that they would have, you know, I don't know if, again, it's something that we could reach out and explore, but I don't know how Select would be responsive to that.
I had spoken several times with the local director of the Select about this issue, and it is strictly scarcity of people. They cannot offer enough money to entice somebody to take this, and the numbers are extremely low. And if they got somebody at that number, the person would jump within a couple months to something else because it would be a very easy offer to beat. So we have to maintain a competitive decorum on what the athletic trainer gets paid through the program so we can have some continuity and longevity. So, and this is not big money in the scheme of things. It's very modest, so.
All right. Thanks, Lou. Thanks, Mr. Myers.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask on behalf of Ms. Mackey Hot-Wagner, which sports require police coverage?
So right now we do have police coverage at football games, varsity boys basketball games, and ice hockey events. We put it in to be contracted. I will say that not every contest gets picked up, you know, but we do for those sporting events, which are higher attendance, higher rate of incident sports, are the ones that we do have police coverage at, or at least we request police coverage at. And if we're not, that, you know, the police do a great job of making sure if they can't provide somebody to pick up the shift, they'll drive through and they'll have, you know, folks making sure that it's, you know, there are folks in the area, which is greatly appreciated.
Follow up on that. Do we have EMS at ice hockey now? Just given.
No, so they will station themselves at the ice arena.
Okay.
If they're waiting for a call. It's not something that we have to have in order to run the event. So we don't necessarily do that. We do need them at football games in order to run a varsity level event. So that's why they're there. But for a hockey event, we have had in the past, and they will station themselves. So we're in coordination with them. But we did not hire them separately to work our ice hockey events.
Do you think girls basketball will need police presence? Okay.
You gonna come and cause a ruckus?
Oh, I'm just wondering. Boys varsity, girls varsity, you know, I'm just making sure.
You know, again, I mean, we really do base it on,
attendance.
Historical incidents and attendance. I mean, that's, if there was to get to a point where we were having issues, and that would be something that we would look into for sure.
All good. Thank you.
All right, we have a question from Ms. Drozd.
Mr. Myers, what does this, like the pay to play fee go towards? Like, I know it's not in our operating budget, but what does that go towards?
So it goes towards like our officials' fees, you know, any other additional costs that might come, any programs that we might not be able to, you know, fund here. If there's something that goes above and beyond last second needs that we have, game workers, things of that nature.
Is there like a budget for that? Like, you know, like as a mom who pays the $100, I would love to know what it goes to.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, so we get for the board, this is where the funds are going to. Is that like on the under the board purview or no? If it's not, just tell me to shut up and I'd be fine with it because I don't feel good. So tell me, just be quiet.
No, not at all. It's an athletic account that we work through the business office with. The funds go in and we use that to fund, you know, we have like arbiter pay, which pays our officials. So that's how we kind of take care of our officials' fees through there. So yeah, I mean, it's under regular board funding, not board funding, but student activity funding.
So then I guess my next question would be to Lou. Can we get like a printout of where that money, like what it goes to?
Sure, we can do that. So.
Okay. All right, I don't see any more questions.
Thank you very much, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, Mr. Myers.
So we have up, next is going to be the school counseling. If there are no objections from the board members, I'm going to cut it off at the end of the school counseling presentation. We'll open it up for public participation, then we'll dismiss and resume tomorrow night. Yeah, okay, good. We'll get to that one when it's time then. So, well, we're going to, Mr. Corn.
Mr. Corn, can you come back on the line? You're going to be our grand finale this evening.
Man, I appreciate the opportunity to begin the draft and end draft day one. So
You're on the clock again.
the mission of the school counseling department is to deliver a comprehensive school counseling program that's provided to all students to provide all students with the opportunities to gain understanding of self and others. The Newington Comprehensive School Counseling Program is aligned with the state framework and our national standards through the American School Counseling Association. Our state legislation requires school counselors to work with all students in grades 6 through 12 to develop an individual student success plan that concentrates in the 3 domains of academic, career, and personal social. In our district, our student success plans are integrated even as well in grade 5. So for this year's budget, for the 23-24 budget, a majority of our budget typically goes through our contracted services, which is Naviance, where we house the student success plans. But at this time, there is not much of a significant change. The one thing that I put in there, and I know it's been expressed a couple of times through board members and students, is a need of our program. I really would love to explore the opportunity to have elementary school counselors within our school district to provide some tier 1 intervention to support our elementary kiddos in their social and emotional well-being. So with that, Dr. Fletcher, I will turn it over back to you.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the board members? Ms. Parati?
Could you just quickly elaborate what the elementary school counselors would do, or how many you would need? Is it one per school, or
Sure.
and how
So-
much money it would cost? Thank you.
Sure. I would have to turn to Lou for cost. I'm assuming I'm going to throw a ballpark. He said around 55,000 typically is what we would, I think, ballpark for a new hire master's level degree, because our school counselors do have master level degrees.
I would say too.
I did.
72 on that.
I did explore at one point with the elementary principals about the grant that was out there for support services, but unfortunately the grant, well, I should say that we agreed the most effective way would be to have an elementary school counselor at each school. It's very difficult to split a support staff member between schools because you can't tell when a student is going to be in crisis. One, to Amy, to answer your question about what a school counselor would technically do at the elementary school or at the elementary level. One thing I always think about with the elementary and school counselors, we are that tier 1 support. We are the first, the front lines within the mental health world. So, and right now that tier 1 is supported with our social worker and our school psychologist at the elementary level, while they're maintaining their mandated requirements through special education or some other services. So that school counselor would do some tier 1 intervention support for all students at the school, not just those that have a plan or a diagnosis. But the other piece is that preventative piece, as well as supporting our students in their mental health and well-being, doing some classroom guidance lessons, and even exploring career opportunity and exploration at that level is appropriate as well.
Thank you so much. And can you just I heard you say a different number.
Yeah, I would say approximately 72,000
Okay.
would be more
Times 4.
appropriate for a master's level counselor at that level times 4. Mhm.
Thank you.
That'd be a bargain if it were for all 4.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none, we're going to end our review at this point here right now. I am going to move on to agenda item D, which is our public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities. If you are here in person, you can speak, or if you want to call in, the phone number is 860-665-8659, or you can raise your hand if you are online. We do limit civil participation to 3 minutes. All right, I'm not seeing any hands raised online. No phone calls are coming in. I will give the board members an opportunity for any final comments if they desire. It's not mandatory. Ms. Drost.
I just have a quick question for maybe tomorrow. I had asked at a previous meeting about how the $8,000 per open choice student, like how that evened out to $18,000, like how we're not losing money on students and coming in, which is fine if we're doing it for altruistic reasons, then that's fine. But and Lou said it had to do with transportation and stuff like that. So if we could just if I could get more information, I thought that was going to be provided and it wasn't yet. Doesn't matter if it's not, but if it could be, I would appreciate that. But other than that, thank you all for my patience as I'm homesick.
Thank you. Mr. Leverrier.
I just want to say to the town and to you, Maureen, I think that Mr. Myers is doing a great job. He's doing a really good job with our equity and inclusion goals. He is engaging all students, from our student athletes to the students in the hallway. A+ job. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone in the room?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Say good night.
Good night.
Thank you all so very much. We'll be back tomorrow night at 6 p.m.
Same time, same station.
Come back here for your breakfast.
Yeah.